Hi, I'm Adam C and welcome to another very exciting auction here at the Haynes Motor Museum. We have a huge collection of barn finds, cars that have been taken out of their barns. They haven't seen the light of day for decades, and I'm going to show you around them and tell you exactly what they're meant to be worth and find out what people are willing to pay for these absolute pieces of... So it's actually around the back of the museum where a lot of these cars are almost hidden. So we're starting with this ice cream van, a Bedford CA from 1961, believed to have been built for the Nielsen's ice cream fleet, but obviously no ice cream has been inside of this vehicle for generations. The estimate's £6,000 to £6,500 for this Bedford ice cream van. I love the number plate. It's not actually attached, but I think that should definitely be preserved in its current state. If you're going to restore this car, at least keep the number plate to demonstrate exactly the state it was in. But I mean, the seats, it's been absolutely torn apart. You've got the Bedford logo on the dashboard, but it's not just vans. We have this Mercedes-Benz 200. This is being sold without reserve. So it's quite a rare model, the 200 from 1975, family owned since 1979 and garage stored since 1989. So it's been stored for a long time. And the interior isn't quite as bad as you'd expect. Some of it has been wiped down, but obviously with the current trend of barn finds, it is important to keep it in as found condition. Now at the end of this video I will be telling you exactly what price a lot of these cars sold for, so you can see whether their reserves are realistic for such projects. Like this Morris Minor, it's got this to protect the sharp edge there. It is missing the wings and you can see why the wings were removed. Here they are inside the car, an absolute restoration project sold without reserve. So it's anyone's guess what this Morris Minor could make. Apparently this car was driven daily until its gearbox failed, and then it's been dry stored ever since for 20 years without those wings. They're estimating £300 to £350 for your Morris Minor 1000. It's got the 1 litre engine, although I think it's just a little bit over 1 litre in this car. And similarly to the Bedford van, this is a Beardmore taxi. So this was a luxurious taxi option for your London taxi drivers. So there's your single driver's seat. No need for an upfront passenger section, so there's nothing there at all. They made about 700 of these. This isn't the worst condition out of all of them, but it hasn't been used for a little while. They're estimating between £2,000 to £2,500. Obviously it's been used for a hotel in its later life. They were said to be the Rolls-Royce of London taxis back in 1964. We have another Bedford van, the HA from 1981. Was used as a promotional vehicle in its later life, but definitely in need of a restoration. The estimate £2,000 to £2,500 for this Bedford project. But realistically, how much is one of these going to be worth once it has been restored? Here's another car that has been sat for a good amount of time. This is the Silver Spirit, which was Rolls-Royce's first car to feature a retractable Spirit of Ecstasy. So obviously it's spring-loaded there, so can retract down when not being used. It's also got hydro-pneumatic self-leveling suspension, much like what Citroen used to use. It's only done 53,000 miles. But again, this car has no reserve on it. But behind it is something fascinating. So this is an Austin Shearline, or once was, what was built to make a replica of a Bentley Special. So a Bentley Special is when they took a luxurious Bentley and created this 1930s looking race car out of it, and the Austin Shearline was like Austin's version of a luxurious Bentley, and now it's been turned into this special looking race car, but still with your flying Austin badge here. So a much more reasonably priced Bentley Special, but basically is a replica of what they would do back in the 50s and 60s. This car being originally from 1951, it is absolutely massive. But if you can imagine, it's used to have a luxurious sloping roof and quite a large wheelbase, but now is a sporty race car. It's been sat in a barn for years. It still features various Austin logos around it. No reserve in auction, but so much work required for this Austin Special replica race car of the 1950s. Now, there are 3 cars in this auction that sadly the owner is no longer able to drive. This Daimler Conquest is one of them. So you can see again the rust, it's in need of absolute attention, and DVLA don't even recognise its registration plate due to its years of inactivity. So it's got an old V5 but no key after it's been garage stored for some time. And again, no reserve on this vehicle, quite some projects, but a car from 1957 isn't as desirable as, say, what is behind it that we're just about to come to. But this period of cars, this era, is actually getting harder and harder to sell because the audience for a car of this age is getting a bit older and a bit less able to come and buy cars like these. So values are dropping, but the price of restoration is getting higher. So it's actually more and more difficult to keep cars like this viably on the road. But welcome to the absolute star of this auction, the Lotus Turbo Esprit, the greenest red Lotus Esprit that I have ever seen. And as I said earlier, the point is to keep them as found as possible, and that is definitely the same with this Lotus Esprit, with cobwebs still caked over the top of the front bonnet and complete invisibility out any of the windows, the front windscreen. And I believe we should be able to pry it open inside. It's actually surprisingly all right. So Lotus must have been able to keep these cars watertight for the interior right-hand drive to be not too bad. It comes with a free pair of aviators, but look, the estimate between £10,000 to £15,000 for this 1982 Esprit Turbo. I think the interior is a big surprise. I don't know if that opens as a glove box or not. There's a few cobwebs inside, but as I said, they haven't touched anything. This is how it is found. There's your mid-mounted turbo 4-cylinder engine. So the history of the Esprit Turbo, this one being the first turbocharged model that Lotus made of the Esprit. Ben & Colville started making their own turbo conversions for the Series 2 Esprit before Lotus did themselves, as early as 1978. But this, the Essex Turbo Esprit, was the first turbocharged production from factory. As well as just whacking a turbo on it, they employed Guigaro to design an aerodynamic body kit for their new Turbo Esprit, with bigger rear lip spoiler and deeper front air dam and air ducts in the sills as well to allow for better breathing, and so you could tell that this is a Lotus Esprit Turbo. So these Goodyear Eagle tyres have got holes in them and are still just as mossy as the rest. Let's try and work out what year is that. They might have been from before tyres were date stamped. I mean, I could have a look at the rear one. You can see where it's been sat. That's why it's important to overinflate tyres if you are going to store cars. Again, I think this is before they date stamped tyres. I can't see anything obvious. If anyone else in the comments has spotted anything, let me know. But the amount of moss all over this car, it is such a project. It's been owned since 1990 and restored by the owner, including the new interior that we saw shortly after he purchased it. But 1995 he stored it in a Dutch barn in West Country, England, and that is where it has remained for the rest of its life. So it has been stored for over 30 years, and you can see how it has been sat. It's such a shame after we spent time and money restoring the interior of this car and then just left it, and now it's finally seen daylight for the first time in over 30 years. Let's have one more look at the interior. I mean, you've got a bit of padding there. It feels really, really nice. So there is a benefit. You've got your brand new interior, your 5-speed manual gearbox. Quite a nice place to be. The speakers are in good nick. Door handle, that is the same as my MGB. And then again, the door cards aren't too bad either. So in 1982, 0 to 60, 6.1 seconds, up to a top speed of 150 miles per hour. I can't see any damage on the car. It's just obviously in need of a full respray. Everything cosmetically needs restoring on this car, and then a huge overhaul on its engine in the middle is required as well. But have you ever seen a Lotus Esprit in such estate. But behind it, we've got one of the Morris Minors of the collection. This is another one of the collection that the owner is sadly unable to drive, but obviously has not been used in a long time as well. All that rust, again, underinflated tyres. And then the front end missing the headlights here. It's got the 948cc engine, so it's under a litre. No reserve on this car, but look, you've got damage on the wings. The money, time and investment involved in restoring these cars, it's often not worth it. So that's why prices are so low for cars in this condition, whereas normally barn find would demand a premium. So you've got obviously the era of Lotus Esprit might demand quite a high price, but the era of Morris Minor, fans of these cars are unfortunately dying out, so these cars are dying too. It is a tricky market for anything from 1970s and earlier, unless it's of an absolute value already. And then the same can probably be said for this Leyland, estimate £2,000 to £3,000. This is the auction preview day. We've got a few cars on the lawn and people are coming here to see what they're about to spend their hard-earned cash on at the Haynes Museum. Welcome to the car with the longest name of the auction. I'm going to have to read this out. It's the Fiat 131 Super Mirafiori 2000 TC Abarth Volumetrico. I guess, £15,000 to £18,000. Now these aren't barn finds. This 190E looks pretty good condition. Estimate only £1,800 to £2,200. And then we've got this Ford with a Red Dwarf logo on the front of it. I believe it's got an oil livery around the side. There you go, Mohawk Gasoline. They are a Canadian fuel company. It's got the 5.7 litre Chevy V8 up front, £13,000 to £15,000. This car actually suits being a little bit rusty, but all in all, it looks structurally sound. It's padlocked, Mr. Bean style. That is how you keep your door locked. But before we see the lots inside, the last outdoor car is this green Mercedes E320 Avant-Garde. It's a paint to order colour from new. Designo Helgren Met is my pronunciation of it. So the Avant-Garde models were the top spec models, and they say it needs a bit of recommissioning because it hasn't been driven since about 2019 when its last MOT expired. 92,000 miles with its 3.2 litre V6, but the paintwork has a few nicks here and there, but otherwise is presented in a pretty good condition. Maybe I've just been distracted by all of the barn finds in the auction, but I've never seen an E-Class estate in this colour. I've always loved the look of E-Class estates throughout all generations. I'm not sure whether this colour, I mean, it's almost the colour of the moss on the Esprit, but I think it suits it. But let's lower the tone and have a look at some of the lots that are inside the museums. They've got various function rooms that include this little Ashley GT Coupe. So Ashley used to make body shells and chassis based on other popular vehicles, much like the Ford Anglia or Popular, which is I think what this car would be based on, a car of about 7'6" in length. So it's got the front mounted Ford side valve engine, 1172 in capacity, twin SU carbs, one of only 37 known to exist. £6,000 to £7,000, obviously needs a full respray, this example. And then right in the middle of the lots we have this very nicely presented Series 1 Lotus Elise from the year 2000 with just 2 family owners from new. It's recently already been recommissioned, ready for road use, new fuel tank and sender, and only 12,800 recorded miles. So the estimate is between £17,000 to £20,000. The roof isn't perfect condition, but otherwise the rest of the car is ready to use. And then along with this pair of Jaguar E-Types, we have the Series 2 from 1970, which has been owned since 1976. It's been in a heated garage from 78. That's how long it hasn't seen the road for. So £30,000 to £35,000 for this garage find Series 2 Jaguar E-Type with the hardtop. But have E-Types already seen their day? The values have risen but are settling down now, again due to the era of car that they are. And then from 1966, this Austin Mini Cooper. apparently a collector of Minis, but has run out of time to restore this one, so he's putting it through auction, £7,000 to £10,000 for this restoration project. But this Aston Martin V8 Coupe is quite the talking point. So the owner bought it from Charterhouse 10 years ago for about £50,000, and he's got bills on file over the value of £100,000 that he's spent keeping this car on the road since then, and he only wants between £30,000 to £40,000 for it. So a £10,000 loss in market value, plus over £100,000 in bills just keeping this Aston Martin going. But this was Aston Martin's press and test car used in their factory. They only made 101 V8 coupes between 96 and 2000, but the owner has the Volante version. He enjoys using that one more, and that is why he's getting rid of this. So there's one more car in here, and it's not the green V8 Vantage. 24 to 26 for that, reasonably priced. It is actually this E30 BMW 3 Series. Now initially you're just going to look at that and think, well, it's just your standard 320i. But this is a Bauer car, a rare coach-built version of the E30. So they actually create convertible versions of cars that were not convertibles before. So before BMW themselves made a convertible E30, Bauer produced these, and they even helped BMW produce their own convertible versions, the E30 Cabriolet, but kept producing these Bauer coach-built E30s for customers. So you kind of keep a roll bar over the middle there, so when the roof's down you can still see a roll bar. But they specialise in BMWs. They even made an Opel Kadett Cabriolet at the same time, and the estimate for this is £6,000 to £7,000 for this rare Bauer Cabriolet E30 320i. But after heading through the lobby of the Haynes Museum, I'm back outside. They were my highlights from the auction. I'm going to head home now and watch the auction and show you exactly the price that some of these highlights made, and work out where the market is going with these 60s, 70s, maybe even 50s vehicles, and see if they're really selling like they want to. Hopefully we'll see quite a few at Adam Seafest on the 3rd of May. I nursed the Viper home carefully, and now I'm back at my desk ready to tell you about the results. So we'll start with lot number 1. That is the Mercedes-Benz, that green example. That managed to sell for £3,200. Lot 2 was that Daimler Conquest Projects, one of 3 cars owned by the same guy who unfortunately cannot drive anymore. However, I don't think any of them can be driven anyway. This was no reserve restoration project. It sold for £260. £260. As I said in the video, the cost of restoration is so high that certain cars that aren't really worth it just don't sell for anything, and literally 200, that's way less than scrap value. And then the next one is his Morris Minor. That was no reserve as well. £120 that sold for. That's it for a Morris Minor. I mean, you could probably sell the bumpers for 120 and profit. Also, please excuse the tiger seal on my lips. I've been trying to stick things back on a car. The third car of this collection was a Porsche 924, and it wasn't actually there when I went to film it, which is a shame because it's a 924 convertible conversion. So it's been turned into a convertible. They never made convertible 924s, only 944s. So that sold for a little bit more, £1,300. But I wish I had a chance to look at that car. Next to the Mercedes-Benz 200, no reserve on this. That managed to sell for £4,000, a little bit more realistic. And then the other Morris Minor, the 1000 with no wings, another project, sold for £420. That was actually above its estimate, 300 to 350. Still had no reserve on it, but it actually did well, £450. To be fair, compared to the other Morris Minor, that was £120. Next we have the Lotus Elise. That one isn't a project. The estimate was 17 to 20. It sold for £16,000. Then we have the Ford F1 rat rod truck, estimate 13 to 15. That sold for £8,800, so a little bit lower. Then we have the Bauer E30 320i. Pretty sure it all starts and runs and drives, estimate £6,000 to £7,000. It sold for just £4,200. That 190e we saw, that was £1,800. It is also massive, but even still that's fairly cheap. But then we come to the Lotus Esprit, the grand car of the auction. Its estimate was £10,000 to £15,000.
£20,000. Massive restoration project, and as I was saying, certain cars that are desirable go for a lot of money as a barn find because you can start from scratch and often have a car that's quite low mileage once it's complete. Mileage is something you cannot change. £10,000 to £15,000 was the estimate. It got £20,000. I remember when the Esprit Turbo was 20 grand for a good one, but that mossy was £20,000. So that's a bit on the other end of the spectrum for the other builds. Then we come to the Aston Martin V8 Coupe. Now, as I said, he bought it for £50,000, spent over £100,000 keeping it running during his ownership. Estimate was about 30,000. It sold for £40,000. So he lost 10 grand on it, plus £100,000 keeping it on the road. Then we have the Jaguar E-Type Series 2 restoration projects. Estimate 30 to 35, only sold for 28. So again, didn't hit the estimate. Then we got the Beardmore Taxi, estimate £2,000 to £2,500. That hit £2,300, so pretty on the money. The DAF didn't sell, unsurprisingly. The Bedford HA van didn't sell, estimate 2 to 3, another restoration project. The ice cream van, £6,000 to £6,500. Didn't sell either. The green Aston Martin Vantage didn't sell. The Ashley 1172 Coupe didn't sell. But the Austin Shearline Special Recreation Bentley Replica, whatever you want to call it, it sold. There was no reserve on the car and it managed to reach £400. Just £400 for that. And finally, the Austin Mini Cooper, another project, £7,000 to £10,000 was its estimation. £10,000 was what it sold for. So a lot to think about there with restoration projects and barn finds, some demanding top money and some basically not receiving any money whatsoever. Cars of the 70s and earlier, unless they are already desirable, are probably unlikely to ever go up in value anymore because the audience, unfortunately, is moving on, and now the 90s and the kind of the 80s and a bit of the noughties, that's the next era of car to rise in value, and you can see it already happen. Even with cars from the late noughties, from 2007, like Ferrari F430s, obviously we know Carrera GTs. I could go on for ages about it, but that Esprit was the whole reason I went to the Haynes Museum for the Charterhouse auction. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Classic cars don't often get much attention, but obviously there's a lot to talk about there. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, but for now, thanks for watching.